URLs of, I believe, a website. Tabletop RPGs are a tabletop role-playing game is a classification for role-playing game where participants describe their actions through speech. Participants determine the actions of their characters based on characterization. The actions succeed or fail according to a set of formal rules, such as rolling dice or just how well you can describe things. Within the rules, players are given the freedom to improvise, and their choices shape the direction and outcome of the game. In layman's term, basically, a group of people get together, they create characters, and they play through a story filled with puzzles, combat, and interactions, all curated by the GM. So as you can tell, without the GM, the game wouldn't happen. So what is a game master? Game master is the person who acts as the organizer, officiant regarding the rules, arbiter, moderator, and the storyteller of whatever your game is. For Dungeons and Dragons specifically, this is often the same role is referred to as a dungeon master, and they're often abbreviated as game master is often abbreviated as GM, and dungeon master is often abbreviated as DM. So we will be using those abbreviated terms for the rest of this panel. As a GM, your job includes creating kind of a general roadmap for your campaign, prepping the events of the session, as well as many puzzles, fights, obstacles your players may encounter. You'll also be playing most, if not all, the NPCs, describing kind of most of the scenery and the actions going on, and also probably your most important job, making sure everyone has fun. All right. So this is one of them slides that just is refusing to load, but the I can't remember what is on the slide. Just to tell you that some famous GMs include Matt Mercer of Critical Role, Mark Sherlock Humes of High Rollers is what it's called, as well. Hey, perfect timing. As well as Brennan Lee Mulligan. All right, but enough about those chumps. Let's move on to the real GMs, me. I would like to give you just my experiences as a GM. I've been GMing for about 5 years, since about October 2018. I started off doing it, filling in for someone while I was in college, and I loved it so much that I kind of wanted to expand and just do it more. I've done a plethora of games, including Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, Kids on Bikes. It's like a Stranger Things style campaign, as well as a lot of games that use the Powered by the Apocalypse system, like Masks: A New Generation. I've also made custom rule sets for campaigns, some based on some of my favorite existing IPs like Persona, Fire Emblem, Castlevania, and I've even been working on my own original game, which is called Card Heroes. It basically attempts to kind of sort of take the elements of a trading card game and combine it with a tabletop role-playing game, something like Yu-Gi-Oh, kind of putting them in that world. But furthermore, I think most important is that GMing has helped me kind of improve myself as a writer and a storyteller. It's helped me foster some creativity. It's taught me to stay on task, and it has allowed me to kind of see instant reactions and get instant feedback on my ideas and what I put forward to. And as someone who is an actual writer who has written stories, screenplays, short stories, it takes for me that GMing really can help with your experience. In fact, I'm actually turning one of my campaigns into a book currently on Wattpad called Bleak Winter. That's the Kids on Bikes campaign. All right, so what is most important? What is most important to me? Again, this is another slide that I luckily have my notes here and I remembered. Is that I feel like I'm kind of proof that anyone can GM. I have been diagnosed with high anxiety disorder, depression, attention deficit disorder, and as some of you may have noticed, I stutter occasionally. Despite all of this, I've been able to consistently GM multiple campaigns from start to finish. And I don't plan to stop anything soon. And also, a lot of my frequent players also have have a lot of conditions and disabilities. And I've been able to watch myself, see them kind of learn to grow and shine, and have them see how their characters have shaped and see how they've expressed themselves. Those are some art I had done for other player characters commissioned. Those are. So, things you should know before GMing. You're going to look a bit goofy. You're going to be doing a lot of funny voices, variety of characters. You're going to be narrating in a dramatic way. It's not exactly, not exactly the thing you'd want to, it's not exactly the thing you'd normally see in public. You're going to have to do a lot of improv. You're not going to, you're not going to be able to kind of, you're not going to be able to script out every single encounter and every single interaction. You will have to come up with some stuff on the fly. But also, you're going to have to do a lot of preparation. That includes writing notes before, during, and after a session, having kind of a basic roadmap for your campaign, creating puzzles and encounters, and mapping out multiple ways the scenario can play out. And despite all of this, you're not going to be able to prepare for everything, and that is perfectly fine. Sometimes player will make a decision you don't see coming. They'll remember something you didn't, or maybe they'll like a new idea will just pop into your head suddenly, and like while the players are distracted, you're going to be open up another window and just quickly making a new map and hoping they don't notice. The next thing I put is you're also this is that people are going to break character. People, this is this isn't really a play. There's sometimes something will happen and it'll cause some people will start to laugh and make jokes. Some people will ask questions in and out of character, and that's perfectly fine. We're all here to have fun. Another really important thing is this is the player's story as much as it is yours. You make sure that kind of everyone at the table is having fun and everyone feels a part of the action. You also do not. Despite that, you also don't want to force a main character. Don't give one player more attention over the others. That is something that will be brought up later. You're going to need a lot of water. You're going to be doing a lot of talking, a lot more talking than anyone else. Have some water on standby. And the other thing is you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Sometimes things just always don't go to plan. You don't really know what to do at points. You might think of stuff on a spot. You might, break a rule here or there. That's okay. Use your mistakes to learn and improve for next session. No one's perfect. That's why they put erasers on pencils. And overall, most important, it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. So, first thing I want to go over. These are what I call the GM rules to live by. The first kind of category I have is knowing your game. Know the system, no matter what game you're running. Again, whether it be Cyberpunk, Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, you should know how the game works. While the players should do this as well, they're going to be kind of using you as their reference. They're going to be relying on you to make sure they are getting the rules right. This also extends to, of course, knowing the stats of the monsters and all the creatures they're going to be fighting, but also you should try to learn the stats of your players as well. That way, so you can prepare things around their character. Have creatures that maybe they can counter or that counter them, stuff like that. But of course, we're not going to be able to remember all the rules at all times. So have the books and rules at the ready, whether it be in a window or just a physical book next to you. You're not going to remember anything, so you might have to look up things in the book. Another thing, this is something. The last thing is take notes. A lot's gonna happen during the session in terms of story and stats and changes. Make sure you're keeping track of all of that. And I would also advise to any players, it's also a good idea to take notes, just so you remember, what's coming up in what's coming up in an encounter, what kind of conditions you may or may not have, stuff like that. All right. The other thing all right, so again, while we're waiting for this thing to load, I luckily, again, have my handy-dandy notes here, is learning from others. If you've ever been a player, pay attention to how your GM runs things. How do they describe a scene? How do they organize their notes? How are they involving everyone? And you can also feel free to ask them advice. This also extends to GMs you may see online. Oftentimes, whenever I want to run a game, and a game I've never played before, I will listen to a podcast of that so I can kind of get a general rule of how things work. Ask for feedback, making sure make sure both your players inside and outside, like you can ask them both inside and outside a session. If they're doing good, just ask them if they're how you're doing, if they're having fun, what things you could do to improve, that kind of stuff. next category I would like to go on, this is what I like to call respecting the players. And this is going to go, make sure the players are involved with what's going on. The players should feel like they have full control of their characters and that this is kind of, that they are part of the story. This can be kind of helpful doing something as small as asking the player, how do you want to do this after they defeat an enemy? Also more complex ways, like if your player has a full-on backstory kind of mapped out, like if they have like a missing sibling or they're out for revenge, try to like maybe build a mystery around that, have clues every once in a while, have like, again, have that sibling show up as an NPC or have a fight planned for whoever they're seeking vengeance against. Another big thing is you want to challenge the players, not beat them. A lot of kind of new players kind of follow the trap where they feel like it's sort of a GM versus the player situation. That's not it. You want to kind of balance the difficulty so that balancing difficulty is something best learned through experience. You know, every player is different, and knowing what overwhelms them and what's fine for others, it varies from person to person. But just figure out time. But like, just you want them to feel like the odds are like the stakes are high, but that there is a chance that they can succeed. As a GM, you're working with the players, not against them. A good way my friend put it is you want them to win. You want to let them win without letting them feel like they're winning. All right. The next set of rules we'll be going over sort of how to bend the rules. Oftentimes, you know, when we're playing the games, you know, again, we can't remember all the rules at once, so you may want to change things around. Big one is the dice do not decide everything. This is a common trap of a lot of GMs, is relying too much on the dice for things to play out. Sometimes you can just say it like give clear answers. Like, for example, like if a level 3 player asks a king to, hand over your kingdom and give me all of its treasure, you can just have the king say no. If you tell them, like, roll persuasion, they get a nat 20 and suddenly you're doing a big argument. But even, like, they can go the other way as round. Like, if a player is trying to convince an NPC not to kill someone, sometimes their words alone can influence the NPC. It doesn't have to be decided through a dice roll. And sometimes you may have to bend the rules. This is kind of, everyone kind of has their own house rules, such as how a nat 1 works, the speed of certain actions. And sometimes your player's going to do something really cool. They're going to do something really cool for like a spell or something, which is technically not how it works, but it's cool. So, it's cool. It'd be fun. It'd be a good moment for the character. So let them do it. You know, when in doubt, refer to the rule of cool. All right. The next thing I should really put off, this is probably one of the most important rules I should go over, is learn your player's sensibilities. I like to play a lot of campaigns that will, like I've done horror-themed campaigns and things like that, and I want to touch on a lot of serious and challenging topics, but at the end of the day, this is a game and we're all here to have fun. If you want to do something that you're not sure one or more of your players is would be okay with, ask them before and get their consent. And also, if they're not okay with it, feel free to ask them for alternatives that they would be okay with. Another big one is try to avoid specific phobias, triggers a player could have. That is pretty simple. If a player has arachnophobia, don't throw a giant spider up on the projector. As well as be aware of physical, mental, and emotional limits of your players. Some of them are not. I've had players who are not as good with their hands. They aren't good at writing. So like using digital things are a lot better. Some are better with numbers. Some are better at describing things. Again, learn your player sensibilities and try to kind of accommodate so they feel welcomed and comfortable during your game. I should also do one other thing I should note. Going back, I just saw something else, but this is another thing. In terms of finding out what your players are comfortable with, a big thing for that big thing that comes up is how relationships are handled. If you want to have an NPC have a romantic relationship with a player character, or if a player character wants to have their romantic relationship with either an NPC or another player character, make sure all parties are involved, give their consent, and are okay with that, especially if they're not your partner in real life. Okay. So, another very important thing is knowing when to let your players go. This is a hard thing, but sometimes there can be a player might just be kind of disruptive. They may not listen to the rules. They may not get along with other players. or it can be something as simple as that they just aren't enjoying the game. You're going to want to know, it's going to be a good to just know like when to let them go. Sometimes you may just have to kick them out. Sometimes it can be as simple as like, hey, I can tell you're not enjoying the game. You don't have to come if you don't want to. We can still hang out. We can still be friends. Biggest example of that is Tiberius in Critical Role, who, to put it short and simple, he was someone who often lied about his roles, tried to always be the center of attention and tried to steal spotlight from their characters, and sometimes also made inappropriate jokes that made everyone else at the table uncomfortable. All right. Next thing we're going to be going over are things to avoid, the big don'ts of GMing. Kind of as Tal says, these are things you should try to avoid when running a tabletop RPG. Oftentimes, these are kind of the marks of a bad GM. This is a lot demonstrated in a video by I Am My Brain called Graduation. I think it's called like Graduation, a Modern Day Travesty, where he talks about a D&D podcast called The Adventure Zone, and one podcast they had that was often considered to be a bit of a failure. I'd recommend watching that video. It's a whole rabbit hole in itself. But for now, let's just go over the general don'ts of GMing. So, do not try to force your players in a certain direction. This is often called railroading. A running thing of this section is that you're going to have to remember that these are group games. You may think something that could be a cool story beat, but if the players would rather focus their attention somewhere else, they want to hang out in the town and do fun things for a while. That's perfectly fine. Just let them go ahead and do it. Instead, try to kind of adapt and see what new directions you can take with the story with what your players are doing. Do not try, and again, this is the thing I brought up, is do not try to force a main character. This is another trap for kind of new GMs, especially if one player is kind of more into the game or doing more than the others, you may kind of prioritize that character, that player over others. And that may make other players kind of feel left out or feel fallen by the wayside. And it's even worse if you put all your focus on your self-insert GMPC. I'd say this could best be avoided. Just kind of try to shape the story around each of your characters. If it's like a traveling party, maybe each location has a different storyline for a different character. I think the Dungeons and Dragons movie does this pretty well, where like each of the different sections has a moment for each of the characters to shine, and then at the final battle they all shine. That's the thing with Final Dungeon and stuff. I always like to kind of have each different rooms kind of shaped around the abilities of the players, such as like a magic gate for the wizard, an obstacle course for the rogue, a survival test for the ranger. Make it kind of feel like, oh, they're all working together, and like this is showing how far they've come, and they're all helping you get through this. This is try to avoid blowing up at your players. This is something that not all of us can control, but we should at least be aware of it. Sometimes things just aren't going your way. You can't set up. Your slides are taking forever to load, and sometimes it's frustrating. It can be frustrating. The thing to do then is to just kind of sit back, take a deep breath, maybe even stop the game for a bit, and even a bit, just maybe take a 5-minute break. Maybe even talk about what might be frustrating you, and just so everyone can come to understanding. It's also a good piece of advice for players. Sometimes you're getting bad rolls all night, or things just aren't going your way. If things are really getting that bad, it would probably be a good idea to just, maybe take a step back, stop the game, and talk about it. All right. Another don't is do not deny your players the abilities for the sake of the plot. Sometimes you'll set up a puzzle and the players can just get past it. You have a big bridge obstacle course and the wizard just casts fly and has everyone fly over it. Don't just say, oh, well, fly doesn't work here because I said so. You want to, if you deny your players their own abilities, they are going to feel like that they can't rely on their own abilities, and they won't feel the need to study up and learn their abilities. What I recommend is deploying what I call a yes and tactic, where you can allow them to bypass the obstacles, but add some new risks in it. Like if the wizard's flying over, have some archers come out and try to shoot them down. All right, those are all my don'ts. The last thing, the last big category I'm going to go over is tips for new GMs. To finish on my rambling, here are just some big general tips I couldn't fit in anywhere else. that can help you prepare your campaigns and make them more immersive, engaging, and fun. So, the first thing I would say is to test the waters. Before running your full-on original story, your original campaign of your own story and your own rule set, try to do a lot. Try to use the try to do like a pre-made module. A lot of games, like a lot of rule books, have pre-made settings, scenarios, modules you can use to create the basic framework of a campaign, including set pieces, dungeons, obstacles, and all you really have to do is fill in the blanks and add your own unique flavor. Really good one is the D&D starter set has 3 adventures that you can use. So yeah, that's always a good one. And this is a general kind of rule that I'd say any GM, not even a new GM, should use this. Have a session 0. This is essentially the planning phase of your campaign. This is when the players usually get an idea of the setting, the tone, what their characters are, what they're capable of, the relationship with the characters. And it often is a good time to get everyone set up and have a good idea of like kind of your roadmap. I think one of the best examples of this is the Kids on Bikes rulebook, where it has a session 0 kind of guide where you the players themselves help kind of create the world. The players can decide on rumors going on in the town or like famous landmarks. People can kind of come up with like the relationships of the characters, kind of add new things to each other's characters. All right. The next thing, one of the things you're going to be doing a lot as a GM is you're going to be describing a scene a lot. Having vivid and captivating descriptions is oftentimes what makes for a memorable and dramatic game. Describe it. All new GMs will first go to what a player can see, but remember, sight is only one of your 5 senses. Try to use all your senses when incorporating it into your description, whether it be like then entering a new location or dramatic death of beloved NPC. These 5 senses can fully emerge. Can help to fully immerse your players into the experience. Now, I actually have I have a little activity for everyone where I have a piece of paper with a scene on them, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to describe them. Now, before we get some volunteers, I'm going to go ahead and give an example for you, just so you have something to model off of. So, for example, let's say your players are you're in a stadium about to take place in gladiatorial combat in front of a mass audience. I would describe it like this. Your platform begins to rise. The sound of clicking gears fills your ears, and you look up to only see a bright light above. This small amount of reprieve may be the only time you have for peace, but there's still a feeling of uncertainty permeating through all of you. Your legs stiffen, your muscles tense, and your hands shiver. It only lasts a few seconds, but it feels like an hour. Part of you wishes it was. As your platform reaches the top, the light clears, and you find yourself in a circular field of sand. Thick stone walls around you in every direction, with lined up numerous cages containing a dark abyss that hides whatever beasts await you. Above the walls are podiums of dozens of bleachers, filled with cheering spectators. Whether they want you to persevere or get ripped to shreds, you don't know. All you do know is that the only thing you can do now is fight for survival. Whew. All right, so would anyone like to volunteer to come up here and read some scene and try to describe some scenes I have? Okay, I see. Yor?
Yeah.
Yep. Behind you, you with the glasses? Yep. Yeah. If you can come up. Anyone else? We have one more slot. All right, Cal, man. All right. Go. I'm just gonna pass these out to you. Nice. All right. Hello. All right.
Did you want them in front of a mic, Joe?
Yeah. If you would like, I believe I can detach the mic. I can.
Just be mindful of the cord length. You might not have. I don't think you have much at all.
All right.
Yeah, we can kind of move closer to you too.
Yeah. Okay.
They can probably take it from the front here, Joe.
Okay. You want to take it from the front as well? Sure. When you are ready, let me know when you are ready, and yep.
So we're just describing the scene.
Just describe the scene, and it doesn't have to be like any longer than like a minute, maybe even less. You know, short and simple.
As you emerge from the forest, before you see a winding yellow road that is has bricks along it, and around it are fields and fields going forth, miles pink posies, and you can smell the sweetness of these posies as the breeze comes towards you. There's a stillness around you as you look forth, and in the distance shines a yellow sun that illuminates from behind it towers that come from the horizon, towers of emerald and green, and you can see that the Emerald City that you've been searching for is before you.
That is excellent. Thank you so much. A lot of good. The way you described the air, the posies, the road, the sun illuminating things, that was all great. And I think that is the first picture I have up. Yep. Do you feel like our friend described it very accurately?
That was good stuff.
All right. Would you like to go next?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Whenever you are ready.
As you come to, your head aching, you find that there are shackles around your wrists, and you look around you in the dim darkness. The smell of must and mold and dead and decay surrounds you, and you see much the same. Skeletons shackled on the walls in front of you. In the dim light, that's what you see. There is mold on the walls, these stones, the dungeon walls ahead of you. But what is worse than the smell and the decay and your pounding head is the rock in your stomach, this foreboding feeling that the skeleton before you is now your fate.
Wow. Very good. I like how you added a lot of narrative to that one, like kind of a lot of kind of suggestions, and again, like a big kind of good opening scene.
That was great.
Yeah, that's great. Here is the scene they were describing. You think they described it very well?
Good stuff.
All right. And last but not least, Mike is ready when you are.
I wish I didn't have to go after them.
You can do it.
Yeah.
You stand before a imposing building. The darkness almost makes it feel eerie, but you know that inside has someone that may be willing to help you. After walking for far too long, it almost feels as if your worries could come to fruition, that this building is vacant. But you read the letters RPD, and without even needing to see the inscription below, you know it stands for Raccoon Police Department. You look up and you notice that there is a light in the window and that there must be someone here. There has to be someone here. You need to talk to someone. There's a short staircase going to the doorways, and you feel this brisk wind pushing on your back as if it's urging you to go forward. The only thing you can do now is enter the building.
Very nice, very nice. And here is that scene. Again, I think that was pretty descriptive. I especially love, again, a lot of sort of narrative sense to this one. Thank you. Can we have one more round of applause for all of our volunteers? Thank you all very much. I say it's going to take you brave, and sometimes you may stumble over your words a little bit. That's perfectly fine. You know, we're all learning here. All right. So that's kind of going over the most important thing I want to go is realize that you're going to screw up. You're going to make mistakes. You're probably going to make some of the mistakes that I went over in this panel. Heck, I've made a lot of these mistakes. But that's okay because you can learn and grow from those mistakes. And if your players keep coming back every week for another adventure, well, then you must be doing something right. So with that, these are all the sources I have used. Here are my contacts. My website is writingwithjoe. My email is writingwithjoe0@gmail.com. I'm on Tumblr, writingwithjoe, and my story, Bleak Winter, based on The Kids on Bikes, is pretty good. It's on Wattpad. It's kind of a story that takes place in December of 2001 of some middle school kids in a small town that slowly things start to things get stranger in a way. So yeah, if you're interested in that, check it out. And at this point, does anyone have any questions? You and Beck.
You talked earlier about making your own systems, and you said you had a persona system. Did you publish that, or?
I did not publish that. That was funny thing. That was actually when we talk about like how like when we talk about how like kind of like making our own like how I talk about like how like, oh, you should use a module before. That was something I did not do. After I like GM'd one time, I wanted to do a Persona campaign. So I kind of dove headfirst about understanding any of the campaign session, about knowing the kind of all of like the basics and how things work. And I sort of tried to make the Persona system around the 5e system. So it wasn't great, but overall the players all had fun, and I met like that's where a lot of people in my current group. That's how I met them. So it still is there was a lot of growing pains and a lot of things I had to learn the hard way, but I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. You have the glasses, and then you're afterwards.
You mentioned that you had ADHD, right?
ADHD? Yes, I do.
Okay, from one ADHD person to another, I wanted to know what your advice is for like, how do you do like the layout when you're like writing it all up and doing like the prep before a session?
Okay,
so make the campaign.
Yeah. So what I always do is Google Docs is your friend. Just having all that done, and this also extends to a lot of just what I am doing as a as a writer is just try to get all of your ideas down on paper first. Just write down all the things you have, just random notes you have. Just get everything down. Use bullet points to try and separate them. I sometimes have a bit of like the organization obsession ADHD. So just try to get everything down, then sort of just sort of organize them. Maybe like for big arcs, I will I'll write a big bold thing like scene where this character shows up. And then I will just describe kind of what this thing is. I'll describe, okay, the character will say we'll say either like I'll do like a summary of like the character will say something like this, or if I want it to be like a big dramatic line, I will write down their exact dialogue. It's a lot of just kind of figure out kind of what space you're sort of comfortable with taking notes and making things. But my big advice is try to get everything down and then worry about organizing it later, because that's the other big thing about your notes is no one else is going to see your notes except for you. So you're not writing a book. You're not publishing this. So if your notes look messy, if your notes look sloppy, if they've got grammar errors, that doesn't matter. You're the one that's going to see it. All right, and then
Can I take a couple, Joe? Or are you good?
after I give your right here.
This is kind of a specific question, but I'm a teacher and I run our D&D club.
Oh, that's very nice.
Thanks.
That's good.
This is like only my second year teaching, so my second year running a club, and it's a lot more organized than last year. But this year, like my main thing that there's like two main things. One I'll figure out myself. The other one is I have like a couple students that like they really want to engage in the role play, and they want to like kind of have more. They want to be more like creative than they are, but when I kind of like push them, like what's going through your mind right now, or like like how do you feel about like this, like, or how do you want to finish it, or whatever it is. They just kind of like go like nervous. I stab them, and then afterwards they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, and these kids are like, a lot of them are in theater and stuff like that, so they're like creative, but they kind of get stuck in this moment. How do you kind of help push that through that?
That's a very good question. If you don't mind me asking, are these like high schoolers or?
Yeah, they're high schoolers.
Okay.
They're mostly like freshmen and sophomores.
Okay. Yeah. That is very good. I'd often say maybe is it like a big group?
Not usually.
Okay.
That's my other problem is a lot of them don't show up.
Oh God, do I know that problem? That's something you really can't control. Yeah.
I think.
Okay, go ahead.
I think time, exposure, and familiarity with the setting is going to enable them to be able to express themselves more freely. I think the more times that they are going to stab somebody, the more times they're going to be like, okay, this isn't the answer I want to express anymore. And just let them stab hobos enough times, and eventually they're going to be like, okay, this isn't what I want to do anymore. Everyone stabs hobos at first. It's a natural part of the process. I stabbed hobos when I was 15. Everyone stabs hobos when they're 15. You just got to let them stab the hobos, and after a while, they're going to do more creative, interesting things.
Yeah.
Just prod them, push them in the right direction. Be like, take a second to think about it. No one's rushing you.
Yeah.
Do you really, really want to stab the hobo? And if they do, let them do it. But just give them a second to consider. Let them know that there's no pressure on them.
Yeah.
And then just give them time.
Right. And what I often would say is that if they do just say they stab him, maybe sometimes try to like try maybe set an example. Like let's just say like, okay, like how like maybe you can ask kind of question like, okay, you stab the hobo. Is it like a very messy stab? Does the blade have trouble getting out? Kind of asking. This is all very dark.
Make him deal with the ramifications of killing a human being. That's a dark take.
Yeah. Like ask kind of guiding questions as well. That's also just again like especially if these are like, you know, ask about like their significant like again if this is their enemy, then maybe you can ask like, oh, like how you know, like what is kind of going through your head as you're doing that. You kind of ask guiding questions would probably be a good one. And right, yeah, no problem. Thank you for your question.
I kind of wanted to piggyback off of what you guys said, just say help answer you a little more, but maybe give them like examples of like things other campaigns have done, and that could like give them like ideas to like more into it.
Yeah, I always try to like when they're just like, I just stab into them. I try to like take that and like meld it into something. You stab into them and you realize you just hit like a major artery and blood starts speaking.
Yeah. I'll say that. Yeah. Based on of what she said, yeah, that's always good. In fact, I know there actually are a lot of players who usually get into the games using Critical Role. This is on, or like other podcasts. Podcasts are probably a thing more for adults, like when you just have something to listen to while you're working. But like if you ask the kids like, yeah, hey, if you want to like listen to these podcasts, I think you'd like these. Maybe you can try a model like try to do some of the things that these players are doing. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Oh, okay, we have a few over here.
Then we got Plaid first.
Let's go Plaid first. Yeah.
Sure. So have you ever planned a game in like current day settings, like on like the actual?
The closest I've done is the one I was just talking about, Kids on Bikes. Okay. That one takes place in December of 2001, so it's current day-ish. Like cell phones are still a thing, cars are still a thing. Television is still a thing, and they are using kind of like they aren't using swords and stuff. They are using like these are also all middle schoolers.
Yeah.
They're using like bats and skateboards and things like that. Although at one point they did find a gun, and then the 11-year-old is just waving around a gun everywhere.
Have you ever tried using like Google Maps for like helping with the setting progression?
I've never done that, but I have oftentimes used like. I do try to find like photos of actual places. Like if I am, especially in that campaign, like if there was like a movie theater, I would use like pictures of actual movie theaters, especially pictures from around that time, in order to do the setting. And in fact, especially if you're doing a horror campaign, liminal space photos are great. All right, Hat Guy.
So I mean, like every new campaign and every new story starts a little different.
Right.
But like the real trouble I can see with, especially like a GM or DM, is how do you start it? What's a good process? You know, like say you have like 3 to 4 players. Like how do you get them all together at the start? It's a good process.
Yeah. There's a variety of ways you can do that. Again, a session 0 is very good for this because the session 0, oftentimes you can add like session 0s. A lot of them have questions the characters can ask each other, like when was the time this character hurt you? What is an action this character did that showed them that they are a true friend? things like that. Things like that. That way you can kind of set up a history. And there are just things like just try to kind of write a bit of in like storytelling. We call this the inciting incident. Try to sort of have a bit of inciting incident that sort of brings everyone together. A certain traumatic event, maybe like again a bit like if they're all in the town, they're all in the same tavern. Like a big dragon comes and tears off the roof, and then they all have to kind of get together because like they're the only ones close to each other, and they're the only ones who can help each other out and things like that. It's also a good idea. So like if you have like a big event happening, so like for example, maybe the opening session takes place at a ball. You can ask each player, again, like kind of like a session 0, like a setup question. What are you doing at the ball? What are you there for? Are you a server? Are you a dancer? Are you a guard? That kind of stuff. Okay. You?
What do you think about party sizes? Like, do you think there's a point where
I do say, because at one point I was too nice to say no to. This is when I talked about having to let some players go. Sometimes I was a bit too nice to say no. No, you can't join. We're a bit too big, and I was running a game of 10 players. That was again a lot of good experience. Still friends with a lot of them. We're all on good terms, but growing pains. I'd say the absolute most is the absolute most you want to do is 8 people, including the GM. That's a lot to handle, especially if you're a first timer. I say for a first timer, I'd say 3 to 4 players, and then you are then the GM.
I think players are waiting a lot, even with just 4 players. So I think you should strive to make sure that the party doesn't exceed 5 if you can at all handle it, even if you have to split up the party groups to have multiple campaigns running to facilitate that. I think people are going to have a better experience if the group never exceeds 4. Even with that, you'll have people often waiting an hour between the chance to swing their sword and then when they get to make another decision.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like with bigger parties, sometimes it'll mean that like combat encounters will last a lot longer, and you may not get to everything you want. Which I'll say that's another kind of good piece of advice. If you don't get to everything you want to do during the session, that's fine. Again, you don't get everything you planned for. That just means you have got less notes to do for next week. You over there.
Do you have GM's advice for players? Is there some things that you see players doing, like in the games that you run, that you really like and you like to see more of?
Yeah. It's going to take me a hot second to think about these, but some that come to my mind is when players kind of feed bits of their backstory with you, maybe not just their description, but like if they're just talking to someone and they're just like, oh, I killed someone a long time ago and it haunts me to this day. Like, oh, write that down. When you kind of have players, players sort of work with each other. If players kind of meet and discuss their own abilities behind the scenes, like I've had players, and I love this, players will discuss their plans behind my back and go over what they exactly, and they'll bring out new plans that I do not know. Plan things outside the campaign, just staying really committed to their character is really good. Those are ones off the top of my head. Do you have any more, Lake?
Yeah, playing towards your character's motive, even towards the chagrin of your own personal feelings, is very interesting. So if you have a character with a specific motivation that runs contrary towards your own feelings, like, oh, my character would totally steal something from this guy, but it makes me feel like an awful human being, but I'm going to stay true to them even if it's difficult. I find that very interesting, and I think from seeing it from the DM side, seeing them put forth the effort to stay true to themselves is very fun. It makes it very engaging.
All right. Hello, you.
I misunderstood the book once. Really bad. In the middle of a very large fight.
Happens to the best of us.
It happens. How would you recommend recovering from that in the middle of a fight with your entire group set waiting on you?
Well, here's the first question. Did anyone notice?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
One of the players is an extremely seasoned GM, and they're like, that's not how it works.
what I would say is, first off, don't be afraid to sometimes hit the rewind button. Maybe just say, okay, let's take that back. Let's try to take a different approach. Let's try to do it with the actual rules. And hopefully, like, it's one of those things like, hopefully you're going to screw these things up. This is going to happen. As long as everyone else is okay with it, it's something that you can kind of learn from. Just try, maybe if you are confused about something before you make the action, like you think it might work that way, but you're not sure. Again, maybe ask someone else to read it over and say, how do you think that works, or something like that.
Are you able to provide any more context?
Yeah, this was Icons. It's a superhero, like comic, like Marvel type deal.
Uh-huh.
And I had misunderstood how one of the abilities worked, where they could like do where my BBEG could do spike damage, and that spike damage had a multiplier that I didn't understand how the multiplier worked. I did not know that I did not understand how it worked until I was killing my players very obviously.
Right. That would be the kind of situation where you would say, okay, I may have been making the damage a bit too much. Let's hit the rewind button.
Yeah.
My personal take, how I handle that thing, is I just build forward. I just invent a reason for that to be the truth. And then they had some device that makes that possible, and then I justify that being the reality.
Yeah, screw it.
And there's a reason why that's the case. And if they need to survive that, then I provide a reason for them to survive that, be that a separate entity or a countermeasure to that device, or that device that makes them stronger than they should have been backfires because it makes them stronger than it should have been. It backfires to the point that maybe it takes a chunk of their health away, which balances the fight back to a more reasonable proportion. That sort of improvisation is keeps the flow of the game in a natural state, and it's going to be a better experience for everyone. It's going to feel much more organic than, okay, everyone, let's forget what the last 3 turns. It's going to be like, oh, that's what they were thinking all along. He just had a device that made his thing do more damage, and it blew up on his wrist. Now he's missing a hand. Now he can't attack as much. And that's how I handle things. If everyone likes in playing, by the book, by the rules, and doesn't like tinkering with that, if that's everyone's expectations and everyone would have more fun just rewinding 3 turns, definitely do that. It's all about everyone's mutual expectations and managing those, and just what works best for everybody. But personally, I would write forward, but you can also go backward, just what everybody wants.
Depends on your group. Cal?
Yeah, talking about the happy accidents thing, I run a lot of pre-written campaigns, and those kinds of mistakes are the kinds of things that actually change the story and make them interesting and make it so that you're telling a story that's never been told before. So if you have that trust with your table and they're like, well, it doesn't work that way, it's okay to be like, this time it does.
Right. Okay.
I don't see who raised their hand first. One of these guys.
I'll say you right there, and then we'll come to white hair horns over next.
Is it Helltaker Girl? I don't know which one.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't watch anime.
It's a game.
Yeah. Anyways, your question?
So about to start a new campaign where half of our group has been playing for half of our lives, and the other half of the group is brand new. As a player, do you have any advice for things I can do to help the game run smoother for the GM, or things that we can do during the sessions just to keep the game running smooth?
So from a player's perspective, again, just kind of have sort of have a session 0 so people can explore so everyone can kind of get familiar with their characters. You also have right now a full kind of description backstory. I know it's a lot of work, but sometimes that can really help out a GM and help them kind of give equal opportunity for everyone, especially if you have even something as simple as, I am seeking revenge against person A, I am looking for sibling B. That can give something that the GM can latch onto and create new story bits and try to get everyone involved. And I'd say that for any GMs, if you find yourselves in this situation, again, you may be tempted to give more attention to the more seasoned players because they might be given more instantly satisfying results, or they may know the game a bit better. But do try to take some time to know about the to give the newer players a chance to shine. Especially, it can also help that if maybe a storyline is going on, maybe the storyline can involve both one new player and one seasoned player, so they're both kind of, again, maybe have them get. I know split the party sometimes isn't some people don't like splitting the party. I say it's a case-by-case basis. Maybe if you split off a seasoned player, you split the party and have a seasoned player and a new player off together as a duo, that can just grow some interactions between the two of them. All right. And then Helltaker.
Do you have any advice for if you want to create I guess this is more, it could be in any, role-playing game, but in my mind I'm more so imagining D&D.
Okay.
But if you're creating a system within D&D, kind of reworking some of the rules, do you have any advice for how you would go about balancing numbers besides just a hypothetical of if they do this, trying to run through as many hypotheticals as possible? Do you have any number balancing advice?
That is again where a lot of campaigns I've done, like Persona, like Castlevania, or Fire Emblem. A lot of times I have sort of taken a lot of the 5e sort of sets and sort of made I've taken 5e sort of like 5e rules and kind of put a fresh coat of paint over them. That's kind of a thing that it's really hard for me to think of off the top of my head. But I would say for things like finding enemies and things like that, try to maybe look through the monster manual and see if there's any enemies that kind of match that creature type that you're looking for. Again, if you're doing Pokemon, see if there's any substitute bats for Zubat or whatever. I'd say also just sort of try to get a little bit of an understanding, especially if you're going through classes and things, kind of try to understand how the play style of the class is, what their kind of main gimmick is, what their advantage and disadvantage are, and see how you can translate that to a different class. We're just still keep the core of it, still keep the core of the idea, but change things around in order to give it a new identity. Do you have anything to add there,
Yeah, what you're saying is just find a template of something that's had a lot of quality assurance go into it so that you can circumvent putting that quality assurance into it yourself, and then to put a couple of tiny twists on it to add the flavor you need to have into it, and make those twists small and not huge in the numbers department, such that it doesn't sway the balance too far in one direction or the other, such that it retains both the flavor you need to serve your purposes and the balance of either the class or the monster or the health points or whatnot. Challenge rating, even in the 5th edition monster manual, is in itself not a perfect system. You can have monsters at the same rating punch well above their weight or well below it for a variety of different reasons. So it's not perfect, and you don't have to be either.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. If you think that something is not working well, again, this applies to both a game you're creating as well as just 5e in general. Sometimes you can bend the rules and again, have what often in card games is called an errata, where you change the rules, change the wording of the rules so it says it technically does this because this is either more fair or more fun.
Sometimes I have my own monster punch a dude, and I'm like, oh, he's never punching that hard again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We have. I will say that it is. I did do.
Is this last question?
Yeah, it is time. Yeah, it is. Last I checked, it was 1:57. So I think we have time for one more question.
One more question. I think we had a question here. So last question here.
Yep.
Might be a bad last question. How do you create story hooks before you know your characters? A lot of times I want to create story hooks for my characters at their backstory, so they're personally involved. And if I don't do that, I kind of feel like I'm railroading them. As like, oh, this is a thing that needs to happen. I want this thing to happen in the story. How do I make them want it to happen before I know who they are?
So is this as a GM?
Yes.
Okay.
Before you know who they are, you're going to have no choice but to railroad them. You're going to have your own story and then retroactively associate them to it. There's just no other choice if you have no information about them.
And try to have look into their backstory, look into their motivations, kind of when it does come up, and try to maybe lay a trail of breadcrumbs to that beat you want to get to. For example, if you want them to face a giant if you want them to face like a giant monster, a beast monster in the forest, if they're looking for if their motivation is that they're looking for a treasure, have clues lead to the forest, or again, if they're looking for someone, NPCs can say, "Oh, I saw them last in the forest," stuff like that.
So just have it really flexible before.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely leave spaces open for the character motivations to meld in with your preconceived constructions.
And again, as I said before, sometimes you'll have a happy even if the player is not going down that path, you may not be able to get to that, but sometimes the player can lead you down a new path where again you can incorporate that idea somewhere else, or you can have you can maybe come up with a new idea or something like that. It's kind of just adapt to what they are doing.
And a way to do that is to have a story of your own, but leave important characters or figures of interest without names. And those dudes can have names added in later that tie into a character's backstory. Think of it like a puzzle piece, but that puzzle piece has the groove where another one can slot in. And that is the nub on the puzzle piece that is part of a character's backstory. And you're fitting it together to arrange, beautiful story for your dudes.
All right. It's 2:01. So, ladies, gentlemen, everything in between. That is all we have time for. But I would like to thank you all so much for coming. This is my first panel, and I am very happy of how it turned out. I'm happy the crowd I drew in. I'm happy everyone looked entertained, everyone interacted, and everyone had questions. So. I like to, give yourselves a round of applause, and please give a round of applause to my lovely assistant Lake here. He has helped a lot here. All right, thank you all very much. Have a good night.